We have an official Lauren Sanchez update.
No, I did not predict that. And actually, I think if anybody had predicted that, they would have needed to be immediately institutionalized in a mental facility because it's not a normal thing to have happen.
Lauren Sanchez, like she's this social climbing gold digger.
I am sad to report that Lauren Sanchez Bezos has deleted all of her Instagram except for these two photos of her wedding. What used to be on here was her trip to the stratosphere with Gayle King and Katy Perry, which she called like a crowning achievement for women, and it received such a furious backlash that I guess she wants to seem more relatable now.
You said all your life you thought you were dumb until one teacher at a community college said to you, "No, sweetie, you're not dumb. You don't know how to spell. You can't." So you were dyslexic all this time, and you carried that with you. I see this tender part of you, and I'm thinking that's where that started.
She pleads with a deep, raw emotion that feels entirely genuine, nothing like the exaggerated stories spun by tabloids or the quiet whispers of untrustworthy sources. The pain she carries is impossible to ignore. You can sense its heavy weight in every movement she makes. Standing before him, her hands tremble uncontrollably. Her voice falters under the strain of her distress, and her eyes overflow with fear and desperate urgency. In a fragile, almost broken whisper, she begs with all her heart, "Jeff, I'm pleading with you. Please, you have to help me." That was the defining moment when everything shifted entirely, changing the course of events in ways no one could have predicted. The video is completely authentic, untouched, unedited, and raw, showing reality in its purest, most unfiltered form. Someone close to her captured it and shared it, and now the clip has gone viral, rapidly circulating across social media and news platforms. On every screen, Lauren Sanchez is visible, clearly unraveling emotionally, desperately trying to halt a massive $5 billion legal battle that is already gaining unstoppable momentum, a fight that seems nearly impossible to pause or control.
Please. I can't stand them. Everything about this circus is just, I just exhausted. Everything I know about them, I know against my will. And I just think it's ghastly. I think it's the most hideous display of tacky new money.
Bezos remains completely silent, simply observing her every move. His face shows no emotion, no flicker of reaction, no sign of empathy or concern. To him, this is not a battle to be fought. It is already settled. There was never any intention to negotiate or reach a compromise. He had no plan to offer her an escape route. The lawsuit, the divorce proceedings, and the orchestrated media silence, all of it had been carefully planned and decided long before this moment. Now, with the video finally public, the world can witness just how far the situation has spiraled, revealing the chaos and tension that had been quietly building beneath the surface for years. This moment was never meant to be recorded, yet somehow it was captured in raw, unfiltered detail. Now, there's no turning back. She has no chance to rewrite the story. The world had eagerly consumed the glittering headlines: a $5 million wedding in Venice, a luxurious yacht, the breathtaking Amalfi Coast as the backdrop, her flawless designer gown, the perfect kiss, and what appeared to be a fairy tale romance. But beneath all the glamour and spectacle, a hidden truth remained. Most people failed to see the reality. Bezos wasn't celebrating love at all. Instead, he was carefully orchestrating a meticulously calculated performance designed for the public eye, every detail planned to project an image of perfection.
Well, look at what she's done and how she's led her life. And the way she's done it, these bold things, always with civility and kindness. She's a unifier. You know, we have big problems in the world, and the way to get big problems done is you have to work.
A source close to him revealed that throughout the wedding ceremony, he remained perfectly composed, not even a flicker of emotion crossing his face. His focus was absolute, and his mind was always several steps ahead of everyone else present. When someone curiously asked, "Why are you so calm?" the answer was simple yet telling, because he had predicted every single moment of this event long before it ever took place, leaving nothing to chance, and ensuring he was fully in control at all times. After enduring a wave of public criticism, she now seems to be working overtime to appear more relatable and grounded. Honestly, watching it is almost laughable. It's as if she thought, well, that didn't land well, the wildly extravagant 10-minute space trip. How do I fix my image? Simple. Throw a wedding so lavish it takes over all of Venice. Then there are the carefully curated photos for the grand spectacle. Not a single image shows her alone. Every shot features attendants adjusting her gown, fussing over her, or lavishing praise. The entire display gives off a strong Versailles-like energy. It's clear she doesn't just want admiration. She wants to be treated like a modern-day queen, a true princess of the present era. Look closer and you see her flanked by 6 assistants, each catering to her every whim. Oddly, one of them even bears a slight resemblance to Jeff Bezos, which might give her a strange sense of security, as if standing next to the ultimate boss in a video game. Honestly, I'm waiting for this era of unchecked extravagance and reckless indulgence pushed to the extreme to finally crumble. It feels audacious, almost distasteful, and fundamentally unethical. The opulence isn't confined to the events themselves. It's visible in their very presence, in the tired, forced way these people display themselves to the public.
Very similar. It's not easy. It's really hard. And there are a bunch of ways that I think that you could do ineffective things too. So
The truth is, when someone becomes so obsessed with themselves, it eventually shows in their expressions, in their posture, in the way they carry themselves. Lauren was moving at an almost reckless pace, far too hurried, far too careless. From the very beginning, media deals, photo approvals, and meticulously planned branding strategies were all put into motion. She wasn't thoughtfully shaping a lasting future, she was building a tool designed for control. But Bezos doesn't negotiate with control. He destroys it entirely. This was never a story about love or commitment, it was always a strategic game of chess. Just when she believed she had the upper hand, he was already making his winning move, decisively removing the queen from the board. Where the public saw heartfelt vows and romantic gestures, he saw only variables to be managed. And even then, he was quietly severing connections and tightening his grip. Bezos didn't enter this marriage blindly. His divorce from Mackenzie had cost him a staggering $35 billion, and he vowed it would never happen again. This prenuptial agreement wasn't about romance or trust. It was meticulously calculated, built like an unbreakable fortress. Every clause was carefully crafted to shield him, not only from financial loss, but from the deeper pain of betrayal. The terms went beyond money, covering reputational risks, breaches of confidentiality, financial vulnerabilities, and even stricter measures, including an unyielding clause against any associative threats.
I did not predict that, and actually I think if anybody had predicted that, they would have needed to be immediately institutionalized in a mental facility, because it's not a normal thing to have happen.
In clear, unambiguous legal terms, the rule was straightforward. If anyone Bezos considered a threat got too close, the consequences were immediate and irreversible. And Lauren didn't just slightly open that door, she threw it wide open. She reached out to her brother, Michael Sanchez, the same individual who years earlier had almost destroyed Bezos' reputation by leaking private messages to gossip magazines. Back then, Bezos had drawn a firm, non-negotiable line. No contact, no exceptions, no gray areas. Yet she ignored it. Whether her intentions were innocent family conversation or not made no difference. To Jeff, this was a blatant act of betrayal. The prenup's protective clause activated instantly. According to an insider, this single misstep became the final trigger, prompting his legal team to start preparing the paperwork without delay. Bezos didn't need to yell or issue threats. Everything was already perfectly organized. Records, timestamps, digital evidence, and most importantly, a prenuptial agreement sharp enough to cut like a knife. Lauren hadn't just broken his trust, she had violated a binding contract. That was a battle she could never win. Only a few weeks had passed since the extravagant wedding. The cameras were gone, the champagne flutes empty, the headlines fading. But behind closed doors, the foundations were already shifting. The spark came from something seemingly minor, a media request. Lauren wanted a solo interview with her name alone in the spotlight, without Jeff or his carefully selected team. Bezos shut it down immediately, calling it poor timing and an act of desperation. That rejection lit a fire in her. Lauren snapped, accusing him of suppressing her voice, controlling her public image, and reducing her to nothing more than a billionaire's trophy.
And just from knowing what I've known just in my research on billionaires, I doubt she's his one and only. I doubt it. She's the woman who is his official and who will accompany him to things like state dinners, what have you. But those guys, they're not really built for that kind of a life. And I think even in her choice of friends, again, she did have stuff going on. She was a journalist. She was a helicopter pilot. She came from nothing and made something of herself. But she's in this position now in life, and she has access to the world's finest minds, and she chooses to befriend the likes of Kris Jenner, the Kardashian clan, and Katy Perry.
Well, that's actually what I was trying to get to, and I forgot my point.
That was the moment when the tension finally erupted. Voices rose sharply, harsh words were exchanged, and then Jeff delivered a line that instantly silenced everyone. "You married me, not my empire." The meaning was unmistakable. This was never about her dreams or ambitions. It was about his rules, his authority, and the careful image he maintained. Lauren wanted independence, a chance to shine outside the enormous shadow of the Bezos legacy. Jeff demanded total loyalty, complete obedience, and full alignment with his vision. This wasn't merely a disagreement, it was a full-blown clash of power. Two people with entirely different ideas of fame and influence colliding head-on. According to an insider, that was the very moment Jeff quietly directed his inner circle to start preparing full contingency plans and backup strategies, anticipating every possible move she might make. That's simply how he operates. He doesn't linger on arguments or waste time in conflict. He acts decisively. And that night, he moved with remarkable speed. Every document was carefully examined, word by word. Accounts were discreetly flagged, and monitoring was intensified to cover every possible detail. The same man who built Amazon methodically, step by step, was now dismantling a marriage with the same exacting precision he had used to construct his empire. This wasn't a warning, nor an empty threat designed to intimidate her. The $5 billion lawsuit had already been drafted, filed, sealed, and was already racing through the legal system before Lauren even stepped into his office. Bezos never raised his voice or displayed anger. Instead, he entrusted the case to an elite team, a group renowned for managing high-stakes financial takedowns, celebrity scandals, government crises, and corporate collapses. These professionals never hesitate, never leak information, and never miss their target. By the time they move, the outcome is already predetermined.
A furious backlash that I guess she wants to seem more relatable now. I think it's kind of funny that she's like, all right, that didn't go over well. That really hedonistic trip to outer space for 10 minutes. You know what's gonna make me look better? This wedding where we rented out the entire city of Venice. And I love the photos she chose for it too. There is no photo on here where she is not being fussed over by servants. Major Versailles vibes, you know. She just wants to be a princess. These 6 servants, man, look at her. This servant has the added bonus of looking a little bit like Jeff Bezos, which I guess made her feel comfortable, you know, for the final boss. But yeah, really excited for this era of, you know, just reckless excess, hedonism to the umpteenth degree to come to an end, because it's amoral and disgusting. And funny enough, it actually is reflected in the way these people look, you know? If you're that self-interested, eventually it shows up on your face and your body.
The $5 billion sum wasn't random. It was meticulously calculated. It accounted for damage to his brand's reputation, the erosion of public trust, violations of the prenuptial agreement, and one unyielding rule in Bezos' world: loyalty above all else, with zero tolerance for compromise. Break that rule, and the consequences are inevitable. Lauren didn't anticipate this. She believed there was still room for negotiation, that this was a matter they could resolve through discussion. But the moment she stepped into his office, begging him to stop, it was already far too late. Bezos wasn't acting out of anger or impulse. He was executing a plan that had been set in motion long ago. "You're going to destroy me," she reportedly sobbed, desperate and trembling. His response was cold, precise, and final. "This isn't personal anymore. It's about principle." Those words weren't a mere warning. They were a definitive judgment. She pleaded and begged, but the machinery was already in motion. In that room, Bezos wasn't just her husband. He had become an unstoppable institution, enforcing the rules he had meticulously designed and ensuring they could not be broken. In that office, he was no longer just a husband. He had become a strategist, composed, unreadable, and completely unshaken. Nothing she said could alter the course of events. Lauren didn't text anyone, didn't call a lawyer, nor reach out to her PR team. She was alone, facing Jeff Bezos in his private office, completely raw and falling apart. Her voice trembled as she said, "You're going to ruin me. You'll ruin us both." This wasn't just theatrics. She fully understood the stakes. A $5 billion lawsuit could obliterate everything: her companies, her endorsements, her meticulously crafted public image, every contract, every headline she had worked so hard to shape. One move, and it would all collapse. Bezos didn't flinch. He allowed her to speak, allowed her to plead, allowed her to completely unravel. Then, with words as sharp as a razor, he struck the final blow. "This isn't about us anymore. It's about principle." That was it. No discussion, no debate. Just a man who had already determined her fate. Lauren had entered that office hoping to repair things, maybe thinking her tears could regain some control. Instead, she encountered a silence that was cold, heavy, and utterly definitive. In that silence was the presence of a man who never bluffs and never retreats once his plan is set. An insider revealed she left the room trembling, not from lost love, but from the harsh realization that she no longer controlled the narrative. Even worse, she knew that any attempt to retaliate publicly would be futile. He possessed the evidence, the records, and the power to completely dismantle her. Most would assume a $5 billion lawsuit would spark headlines, chaos, and dramatic denials. But Bezos doesn't operate that way. No flashy statements, no leaks, no public show, just calm, deliberate, and unyielding silence. It was a calculated, almost clinical kind of silence. Behind closed doors, there was no chaos, only a tightly controlled lockdown. NDAs were enforced immediately, estate advisors quietly updated, security discreetly doubled, assets shifted, trusts restructured, and every shared account meticulously cleared. Insiders now describe it as a full-scale strategic purge, carried out with the precision of a corporate takeover. No shouting, no visible drama, just flawless execution. Meanwhile, Lauren was in a panic, desperately trying to keep up. She reached out to top crisis PR firms, pleading for a narrative that could make her appear relatable before the fallout obliterated everything she had built. But the true fear wasn't merely the looming $5 billion lawsuit. It was the unknown, the arsenal Jeff still held in reserve. He wasn't just preparing to take legal action, he had a hidden vault of personal evidence, texts, emails, private photos, and voice recordings, proof Lauren never imagined could surface. If she dared to go public, to spin the story in her favor, or portray herself as the victim, he wouldn't hesitate. He would unleash everything and let it consume her completely. This was not driven by emotion, anger, or passion, but by cold, calculated precision. This isn't a story of heartbreak or personal drama. It's a battle of strategy and information warfare. Jeff Bezos, the mastermind who built his empire on data, control, and foresight, had prepared for this conflict long before it ever began. The next move? Already in motion, silent, invisible, and unstoppable. This is not some Hollywood breakup or tabloid gossip. It's a meticulously planned strategic purge, executed without emotion, guided entirely by careful, deliberate planning. The $5 million wedding? A carefully constructed illusion. The lavish yacht parties? Distractions. The designer gowns, staged Amalfi sunsets, and sparkling fairy tale moments? All noise, designed to conceal the true plan beneath. Bezos never viewed Lauren as a lifelong partner. To him, she was a variable, a potential risk, a liability that needed constant management. When she finally crossed the line, he didn't shout, argue, or waste time with words. He acted decisively. One move, one command, one lawsuit. Cold, final, and devastating. The romantic story the world believed in, to him, it never existed. His empire, his legacy, his control, those were the only priorities, the unbreakable rules. He had built Amazon from a small garage into a global powerhouse. He had designed rockets to reach space. Did anyone truly think he would let a relationship endanger all of it? Not a chance. Lauren misjudged the reality. She believed she could charm, maneuver, or negotiate her way back into balance. She thought love gave her leverage. But by the time she realized the power had shifted, it was far too late. She wasn't negotiating anymore. She was fighting to survive. This was never about love, heartbreak, or personal feelings. It was about power, control, and a man fiercely protecting his empire. That night, she didn't just lose a husband. She triggered a machine. Once activated, it moved relentlessly, tearing through everything in its path. Now her identity, career, public image, brand, and even her name teeter on the edge of a precipice. One more calculated move from Bezos, and it could all collapse in an instant. This story isn't merely fading away. It's being erased, quietly, methodically, and permanently. History makes one thing clear. When Bezos removes someone from the picture, the world doesn't just move on. It forgets they ever existed. To the public, the headlines painted a dazzling image. Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez, the ultimate power couple. A billionaire romance wrapped in luxury yachts, sparkling diamonds, Amalfi Coast sunsets, and picture-perfect designer vows, all designed to impress the cameras. But behind that glittering facade, this was never about love. It was a high-stakes, strategic game of chess. Lauren's fatal misstep was simple. She allowed emotions to enter a contest that only rewards cold, calculated control. She believed she was untouchable, that carrying the Bezos name offered an unbreakable shield, a lifelong protection. But in Jeff's world, there are no shields, no room for sentiment. The moment you become a threat, you stop being a partner, you become a problem. And Bezos doesn't spend time untangling problems. He removes them, cleanly, efficiently, decisively. What began with a romantic kiss in Venice, under champagne flutes and flashing cameras, concluded with a $5 billion strike. a blow far more devastating than any typical breakup in recent memory. There were no second chances, no soft conclusions, only silence, calculated strategy, and total erasure. She pleaded, she wept, and she entered his office clinging to the fragile hope that he might still listen. But Bezos had already stopped engaging. He had moved on. Quietly and methodically, he was erasing her, removing her name from accounts, businesses, and contracts, dismantling the very future she once believed was secure. She was no longer a wife, a public brand, or even a central figure in the story. She had become a cautionary tale, a warning, the woman who thought she could outsmart the machine. But Jeff Bezos doesn't simply close chapters. He destroys the book, deletes the files, and wipes the slate entirely clean. When he's finished, you're not a headline or a piece of gossip. You're a footnote, buried in silence, erased from memory, and vanished without a trace.